have a question to all the three speakers. The first question is to Daniel. He had a very interesting presentation. I would like you to comment on the role of artificial intelligence. You said that high, a more educated group of people might not suffer from job loss, because they are not easily replaceable. What about artificial intelligence? I see that most of the highly knowledgeable skills are being transferred, taken over by artificial intelligence. Can you just comment on artificial intelligence at that particular area? That's to you. If I'm allowed, I'll go to the next question is to Ujala. Your recent experiences have a lot to do with disaster management. What are you doing about it in your library? And also, digitization of special collection. This one actually goes also to Lorraine, who mentioned that she is involved in already in some kind of digitization of a certain part of our collection, which means that they're already doing something, and probably you're also doing, but I just didn't hear about it. Can you just, the two of you probably just shed light on that? And the last one is to, going to Lorraine again. Oh, no, I think I'll just say, yes, to Lorraine. How you are dealing with inequalities? Because, just as simple as that. How are you dealing with inequalities in all this staffing and who, where? We're not the same in our work environment. Some of us are very top and earning a lot. Some people are doing very junior jobs. Some of us go by bus. Some of us are driving big 4x4 to work. We're not the same. So how do you deal with the inequalities? Thank you very much.
Dr. Lulu, I think you can start.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Very interesting and obviously very difficult to very difficult to answer. I think when thinking about artificial intelligence, a good starting point is always to distinguish between narrow intelligence, so the things that we've been quite familiar with. I think chess-playing computers or computers that are skilled in doing one particular thing, computer systems skilled in doing one particular thing really well. That type of narrow artificial intelligence has been around for a while, and we're seeing increasing applications of that in all spaces of work. And essentially, to a large extent, that is just really big information crunching machines. But then on the other side of that, I think we have to think about general level intelligence. So we often talk about human-like artificial intelligence, machines that can simulate or emulate human thinking. And in that sense, we haven't developed as fast yet, right? So it's not quite there. From a library perspective, I think if I was an expert in that area, or I was working in the library area, I think it would be important for me to analyze the range of tasks that is being done within the library context and understand or do some sort of understanding of what of these tasks will in the near future be executable by machine intelligence, and come to grips with that, and then accept that this future is coming. There's some aspects of what we're doing in any occupation these days, in any industry, that is going to become executable better by machines than by human workers. Identify these, and then on the other side, identify what is it that we can contribute that may not be necessarily addressable by an artificial form of intelligence, but really requires to a large extent still human intelligence. If I may just give one example where I think libraries will play a super important role going forward, and this is a personal opinion, is that I think in what is generally referred to as a sort of a post-truth society or post-modernist society, we have a serious challenge in terms of understanding knowledge and understanding truth. And I think libraries, to a large extent so far, have spent a lot of energy in accumulating, sorting, understanding, disseminating content. But there's a next level there that I think libraries should be ready to rise to, and that is to not only understand the data, but understand the metadata, understand where does this evidence lie. With COVID-19, we see a lot of that. You see academic paper has appeared saying this, academic paper has appeared saying that, but it's only once you start questioning in what type of journal did this paper appear, how was the peer review process, how long did it take, can we actually, what's the quality of the data? So a more critical evaluation of content and no longer just disseminating content itself. And for me personally, I think there, in terms of educating people to judge content, this is something that I think artificial intelligence is going to have a great deal of problem with. But I think human intelligence is well suited to that. And I think that's an important example of an area that I think libraries can develop into.
Any of the other speakers would like to say something about artificial intelligence?
No.
Can we go on to the next question? Sir, maybe just repeat your second question. Okay, Java says she's got it.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis. I think at the moment, with regards to disaster management, I think most academic libraries in South Africa have disaster management plans. And when the disaster did hit us, we were in the process of updating our particular plan. And the issue is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel around disaster management plans. There's some exceptional plans that are out there for the entire sector. IFLA, and there's the NEDCC that has templates, etc., that can be followed. However, I think it's important for us to raise our awareness and consciousness of disaster and the types of disasters that could happen. This was an absolute freak of nature. You know, and you are least prepared for something of the scale that happened. However, I think as part of disaster management, and when something does happen, you need to know what do you have in place, who are the people that you need to connect with on campus, etc., and work around that as a project to ensure that that disaster recovery is done timeously with the necessary expertise. With regards to digitization, we had already started doing digitization. I mean, digitization has been ongoing for quite a few years at University of Cape Town. We are well equipped. We have a fully functioning unit. However, the disaster also then thrusts this at, to a new level of awareness. And we've just been given a grant by the National Institute of Humanities and Social Sciences to actually allow us to fast track some of these initiatives. And so we've decided to include digitization as part of the restoration and rehabilitation process, especially for materials that are at high risk, those that are of national and cultural heritage importance, and the third category would be around research importance. So this is how we're managing the materials that have been impacted for digitization at the moment. But the program of digitization is ongoing. Yeah.
Thank you, Jana. We've got two questions. Follow-up to my previous question, is it safe to assume that the landscape of blue-collar labor will also change to meet the unforeseeable demands?
Yeah, excellent question. Thanks so much. I think first, in terms of bridging the gap, is it possible? Who can say? I think it's going to be a major challenge, and I think in that regard, while technology might be the problem, I think it's also the solution. I think open access to higher quality education is critical. In the South African case, everybody would agree that there's absolutely no question about it, that we still have two different streams of educational quality in this country. There are some students that have access to really good schools, really good facilities, and then there's just a very large portion of our kids that just don't have that access. It's very, very difficult to see how we're going to bring those two to the same speed without using technology aggressively and investing in that, and using that technology specifically to get our best educators and disseminate their teaching everywhere. And I think we're almost there technologically that we can do it, but it requires the right investment in the right places and the right sort of mindset and thinking. And then about the blue-collar work, of course, it's nothing new. Anybody that's been to a modern car plant or any manufacturing plant would see that slowly but surely robots are creeping in there and replacing work. that is not always a bad thing. It's a good thing because it means we can produce products cheaper and better quality, etc. And these machines don't get tired, etc., etc. But of course, it does mean that there's a reduction in demand for people in that area, and that either we got to grow demand in other areas or we got to retrain. So that's a big challenge, but that's not a new challenge. It's been ongoing, you know, as long as technology has developed in that space.
Thank you very much. Reflection. Is it important to look at staffing, student profile, environment we work under, organization as a whole, best technology that is suitable for that organization as guiding principles when we unleash our potential?
I think there has to be a separation of the components that you've listed here, because guiding principles tend to be more philosophical, and they tend to set the tone of who you are as an organization. The other factors that you've mentioned here are critical as part of that reflection, and it will influence as well the guiding principles. So part of the reflective process is to understand the environment within which you're functioning, whether your structure and your staffing capabilities are able to resonate with the demands of your environment. The best technologies, if you can afford it, that's great, because that allows you greater access, or your stakeholders greater access, but it also optimizes your efficiencies and operations as well. So you need to recognize and to articulate what are those guiding principles that are important to you, and how does your entire holistic view of your entity or your library is critical for the realization of those principles.
Thank you. And then the last question coming up for Lisa. How do we talk about ourselves? And Ujala, what role do we play to breach the digital divide? As heroes to students who depend on our support, but how to grab the attention of who only play the game of numbers in the short term and not innovation, transformation, or agility? Lisa, can we ask you to answer how we talk about ourselves? Maybe just unpack a little bit.
Sure, I'm not confident exactly what the context is of the question, but I think what I can say is that many times I hear libraries speak about themselves as lacking the necessary space, technology, staffing, etc. And what we might do is just pivot that just slightly to say, with the resources we have, here is the contribution we are making. That contribution is important, it is valuable, it is necessary for student learning and success, for faculty research, for whatever else might be our mission. And here is what we could do more if we had more. Because most of our libraries actually have quite a bit of resources. We've heard some budget numbers here today, and I also work at a very large library. But even when I worked at a small community college library, we had significant investment from our institution. And if we could tell the story of the impact of the investment and then talk about increasing the investment rather than talking about a lack, we can position ourselves as part of, I loved Lorraine's, I'm going to say succeed forward rather than just fail forward. But I love that notion, right? That we need to think about how are we moving forward, not focused on what limitations we might have today.
Thank you. Ujala? How to grab the attention of those who only play the game of numbers in the short term and not focus on innovation, transformation, or agility?
I would agree with what Lisa has shared, because we can do a lot, but you know, it's always good to have more. But you know, we are faced with what we have, and I think under the circumstances, we've done way beyond what was expected of academic libraries, particularly here in South Africa. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all four our speakers. You've done an excellent job. You've kept our attention, although it was the afternoon shift, normally the graveyard shift. I didn't hear any snoring or anything. I think we all enjoyed the session, and the the talks. Thank you very much for your contribution, and the two in-person speakers as well. We really enjoyed it. And thank you to our delegates, the virtual delegates, as well as the in-person delegates, and our team there at the back. I think you've all done a good job. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow, refreshed, and looking forward to the next sessions. Thank you very much, and goodbye.